Hello, friends. This is People Are Interesting with Jan K. In each episode of this show, unique individuals share stories that take us on a ride across ideas and places, featuring crocodile attacks in Indonesia, escaping war-torn Lebanon, and shark protection schemes in Mauritania. This podcast takes you where you've never been before. Enjoy and thank you for joining the club. Okay, so you found yourself in Maldives and you spent there around a year.
Yeah, so I moved, it was September 2018, until about July 2019, so right before I started my master's degree.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And so a marine biologist, why do the hotels need to have someone like that on site?
I imagine, so basically the Maldives is, like you said, it's an archipelago, yes. So there's about, if I remember correctly, a little over 1,400 islands, or it might be 1,200. Anyways, above 1,000, and split into different atolls.
Mm-hmm.
So an atoll is sort of like a chain of islands, in like sort of ring shaped or something like that. You know, like
Mm-hmm.
if you look closely at how these islands are laid out, you'll see. And they're spread over, so from the southernmost island to the northernmost island, there's about 800 kilometers.
Mm-hmm.
So, it's actually quite big. And it's all tiny islands. So I think, if I remember correctly, the biggest island is about, I want to say, 4 to 5 kilometers long, not longer than 10 kilometers. Like, they're really small, and mostly they're way, way smaller than that. So essentially the country is 99% water.
Mm-hmm.
And most of these resorts, and it's not volcanic or anything, so they're just islands, just basically sandbanks and stuff that stick out. And the Maldives hosts about, I want to say, about 3% of the world's coral reefs. Since it's like mostly water, and it's tropical and everything. So all of these resorts are built on individual islands. And the Maldives, I don't know if people have looked at pictures of the Maldives at all, like very postcard wise, like you see these water bungalows or water villas that are constructed basically above the water, so on columns around the coral reefs, and so that you basically have a water villa like above the water level, and that's
Mm-hmm.
what makes it so luxurious and everything. That's what the Maldives are known for. So essentially, every resort has its own coral reef and everything. And I mean, to build these constructions, this infrastructure, a lot of it has had to be destroyed as well. I mean, it's not realistic to expect that they will build them around, So sadly, a lot of the coral reefs around the resorts are not in great shape, just because, also because just general climate change and everything, which I can get into later, but also because just of the construction of the resort itself. So in essence, I think they just kind of place marine biologists there. I mean, it depends on the resort. Some put more importance into it than others. I think, I'm not quite sure if it's just as a sort of show off, like, hey, we have a marine biologist on board, because like the most precious resource of the Maldives is the water and the coral reefs and the biodiversity in the water. So it's something that most people that come to take their vacation want to explore. So if you have a marine biologist, a professional, so to say, on board, then we're there to inform and if you so many people coming to my office like, what's this, what's that, like la la la, wanting to know all sorts of things. So it makes sense.
So the function of a marine biologist for a resort is not necessarily to make sure that whatever activity is taking place at the resort is not uh, too harmful for the marine environment around the
Um,
resort. It's more to entertain tourists or to educate tourists, so to say.
it very much depends on the resort because I've got experiences also from fellow marine biologists at different resorts. So I mean, I can only speak about the resort I was at. So basically, I know that for me, my main role was to be a snorkeling guide. So it's not really a job for marine biologists, you know. But to them, it's a sort of like a selling point if you take people on a snorkeling tour with manta rays, with sea turtles, and everything, with somebody who actually knows something about the ecosystem and the animals in it and stuff. So I mean, I would I would seize the opportunity to obviously to try and get through to people about how to act, how not to act, or like how to behave, how not to behave, what they're seeing, and just show them the beauty of it. Because I mean, to me, it's something that I'm so familiar with that sometimes I forget that most people have absolutely no relationship to these ecosystems and to these animals, and yeah, don't really know how to behave around them. And so it was at least it was good because anytime, and I would have to do snorkeling trips pretty much on a daily basis, mornings and afternoons and stuff. So it was always good to talk to people because most of them I feel learned something new or yeah, we're interested. I mean, a lot of them don't speak English because we get a lot of Chinese, like a lot of Asians. At least at our resort, I think it varies from resort to resort. Some are more popular with different crowds. But yeah, so that was mostly that. But then also you have different tasks like from what I know, most of the resorts collaborate with at least two different NGOs. There's one that's called the Olive Ridley Project, which Olive Ridley is a species of turtle.
Hmm.
um, and I mean, out of seven sea turtles, like there exist seven species of sea turtle in the world, out of which six are known to be threatened by extinction. And the olive ridley turtles are turtles that are not local to the Maldives, but they do pass through seasonally because from what I know, they're on the way to India or like somewhere else to lay their eggs. So they come with the currents, and it's turtles that go on large migrations. I mean, thousands of kilometers, no? And because the current that comes through the Maldives is quite strong, coming from West Africa, East Africa, it brings a lot of garbage and a lot of ghost nets. So, fishing material and fishing nets that have been lost at sea, which happens way more than people think. And turtles get entangled in it. And once it gets entangled in it, it cannot dive down, so it cannot feed, or it just a lot of them get very badly injured or die from it. So you find quite a lot. So what we do basically, this project collects data on a bunch of things. So do you know how to identify turtles individually? So
Uh,
no. Most people don't, so I'm just asking. So basically, you have a turtle in mind. You know what they look like, a sea turtle.
yes.
So scales all over, like on their carapace, and they have scales even on their faces. No,
Hmm.
so it's a fingerprint. If you look at the sides of turtles' faces, these scales will be different in every single turtle. It's like a fingerprint.
Oh,
So
okay.
if you take pictures of the turtle sides and you collect a database basically, then you'll be able to identify the turtle every time. So basically, I have my house reef by my resort. So every time I went out on snorkeling tours with the clients and everything, I would take pictures of all the turtles. And so over time, this has been done at our resort for like several years, at least 6, 7, 8 years, no? So there's quite a large database. And there's turtles that you can see throughout the years that just are always there, and some that are there for a while and then disappear. You don't know why. Some juvenile ones that settle into the reef, because hawksbill turtles, which are the turtles that you'll find there the most, hawksbill turtles, they are turtles that when they're very small, so when they're born and like this, usually, well, it's still a little bit of a mystery where like tiny turtles go, but they float with the currents basically, and then once they reach a certain size and stuff, they settle on a reef, to grow. So basically, you will see really tiny little turtles like this that are just reaching juvenile stage, and so you document, and all these data later go to that project. So they collect massive data from everyone, from every resort, and they also have the Adopt a Turtle project. So basically, all these turtles that we have, when we register them, if they're new, they just get a generic code. But if somebody wants to help, they can adopt a turtle. So it's a certain fee, and then you get like a little turtle toy, and then you get a picture of your turtle, and then every time I recite this turtle, they get an email like with a picture, like, here we've seen, Kim, la 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 la, or we've seen Morty, la 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 la, so yeah, that's what they do as well. And so you collaborate, like you donate to this project basically, and it's sweet because a lot of people are like, oh, I'm gonna get this for my nephew, I'm gonna get this for my la la la, they love turtles. So, and then you have the manta ray project, which collects the same. So manta rays also have a way of identifying them individually. Do you know what a manta ray looks like?
No. I can Google it and put it on the screen share.
Yeah, because I feel like a lot of people know what turtles are, but maybe they have never heard of a manta ray before.
Oh
even
my.
Though some of the most charismatic marine megafauna there is, for sure.
Right. That's outstanding. Is that it?
Yeah, yes. So manta rays are magnificent creatures. A lot of people are scared of them when they first come to our resort, but because they can grow up to like 5, 7 meters in wingspan. They're gigantic, but they don't have any teeth. In fact, they're filterers, so they just filter the seawater. They're super gentle and they're super sensitive. So near the resort I was working at, we had a hotspot where they would come and see seasonally with the current to a cleaning station. So all these big animals, they have cleaning stations in the water where they pass through, and there's like little critters, like little shrimps and stuff, and little other fish that feed off the growth that they have on their bodies. Like it's mutually beneficial because they feed off the crap, and the mantas and the sea turtles get cleaned basically. So in any case, so you see these spots, you can see on the pictures here, they have spots on their belly.
Yep.
Yeah, so every manta will have a different pattern of spots. And that's also like a fingerprint. So if you manage to get pictures of the belly, basically, and then you submit, you'll be able to identify every manta individually. So that's how they track them, because mantas are also very migratory. They travel quite large distances. These mantas stay within the Maldives, but just travel a lot among atolls. No, they travel where the food is, basically. So when the currents half a year go one way, and then the other half a year go the other way, so they just kind of follow the currents to where the currents are taking their food. So that's how it goes.
Do they have natural predators?
Yeah, sharks mostly.
Whoa.
So yeah, I mean, when they're born, they're smaller than this. They're maybe born at maybe like a meter or a meter and a half or so big. And I mean, you can see some of them. I've seen some of them with like bites in their tail, but they still grow, like it's fine. But mostly the biggest problem to them is that I've seen a lot of them with wounds from engine strikes, because these are animals that feed on the surface and they spend a lot of time on the surface. And yeah, so there's a heavy amount of boat traffic in the Maldives, because every resort will take their people back and forth and back and forth. There's so much boat traffic. So I've seen a ridiculous amount of mantas that have wounds, some worse than others, on their back from clearly engine strikes, because they have like just stripes. So it's like an engine passing over it. You can also see that in turtles a lot, like any animal that comes to the surface a lot. So yeah.
Why is the focus specifically on those two types of animals living in the sea, on the turtle and on the on the manta ray? Is there any particular reason?
It's, yeah, they're just like some of the more charismatic and more threatened species over there. So there's a lot of tourism around manta rays and sea turtles. And there's some of, like, manta rays are threatened by extinction, sea turtles are threatened by extinction, and there's some of the animals that face the most anthropogenic impact there from different sources. Like there's the tourism, because as much, like, you gotta consider, though, the Maldives is a country that has made shark and ray fishing completely illegal. So it's like a shark sanctuary. They're not supposed to be fishing. Not that it doesn't happen illegally, like in everywhere else in the world, but it's supposed to be illegal. So manta rays are not supposed to be. At least they're left alone in that regard. But like I said, boat traffic is a problem. Tourism is sort of a problem in the sense that, and I've seen it with my own customers, so to say, that people are so, it's such a social media world that everyone just like wants to see a manta ray and get their pretty picture and get as close as possible, because it's so cool to have touched a manta ray. But what you should leave these animals alone. So, because I've spent a lot of time with them in the water, in the sense that I know how they behave, and they're very, very sensitive. But they're also very curious animals. So I've seen them, if I was alone with them in the water, or only with like a few people that were very quiet and well behaved and like calm, they will stick around. They're super curious and they'll play with you. Like I've seen them dance for me, like they do these little dances where they go to the surface and like swing around, and like do like circle and stuff like that, and they don't mind. They're very intelligent creatures. But most of the time, if you have hotspots where the resorts know they will find manta rays, most likely, every resort in the area will come to the same place at the same time with tons of people. So I would set a limit. Like I would never take more than maximum 10 people. And I was very strict because, I do not care so much about, I want them to have a good experience, but more than anything, I want the mantas to be safe and to not feel like this is not a good, like, safe spot for me anymore. Like I don't want them to be harassed, So you should never touch a wild animal. You should never, chase a wild animal. This is all things that they have observed in the last few years, that every year there's fewer and fewer manta rays coming to the spot, and there's reasons for that, So if they see that they cannot spend time in peace there, they will start avoiding these places. So you're sort of changing their behavior, and this might have an effect on their populations, on their feeding behavior, or whatever, So you don't want that. And people need to comprehend that they're, animals are not just there to take pretty videos they're not there to serve them. So we're lucky to be able to see them and to spend time with them. But most resorts, they just want to make money off of it. So it's like, take as many people as you can. And then you have a lot of tourists that are just very disrespectful in the water. Like they just dive down, try to chase it, try to, have no patience at like pushing each other, and then just getting as close as possible to the animal and not giving it space and everything. Well, it's like, if you just float on the surface, not moving and just calmly, the animal, even if because they swim in circles, even if it swims away, will come back around most of the time, you know. Just have to be patient and calm. But yeah, so in any case, some of the like biggest attraction in the Maldives is obviously marine wildlife, and then you have the mantas, the sea turtles, and the whale sharks. But in my atolls, it's very rare to see a whale shark, so that was not a big concern here. It's in other areas of the Maldives.
Got it. And one thing that I found particularly interesting about what you've mentioned is that the current from, you said, East Africa is quite strong, and it carries a lot of crab, and which hits Maldives. How is that impacting the marine environment on the islands? And is there anything that people are trying to do to prevent it in Maldives,
Honestly,
but also more generally?
Honestly, from what I've seen, no. So basically, the problem with the Maldives is that, so imagine tourism there started quite late, no? Because it's like a very fancy place. So it used to be just a very humble island life sort of, nation until tourism and like high-end tourism hit. But this started slowly, in the 70s or 80s or so. And back in the days, like the first hotels I know had a policy of whatever trash you bring in, you take back with you. Because they don't have any facilities or anything, no? So what are they going to do? They didn't have plastic at the time. So in any case, this started to become bigger now. So now you can imagine that the Maldives has a population of roughly 500,000 people, plus the amount of tourism that they have on a daily basis. And so by now, one of the biggest problems they're facing is plastic bottles, just for drinking, obviously. And all sorts of like single-use plastic items, like plastic bags and all of that, but mainly plastic bottles. So essentially now, obviously, that policy of take your trash back with you doesn't exist anymore. You cannot do that in a 5-star resort now. So they've got the following options. Either they dump it in the sea, which supposedly nobody should be doing, but I know it happens. Or else there's this island, and I forgot the name of it. It's like a fake island that they created as sort of a landfill.
Oh my God.
I don't remember the name, but in any case, so most resorts take their crap and put it there. So it's a landfill kind of island, no? Which, it's just, I guess cannot hold everything forever. And now, from what I think I know, is there is one organization trying to implement changes when it comes to like plastic consumption. And there is there you go.
Jesus Christ.
There is a recycling facility just for plastic bottles now, but it is small and it cannot process everything. And the only other option they have is to, take all their trash and ship it to, recycling facilities, which they're not going to do because it's expensive, honestly. Like you would have to ship it to China or whatever. So in the end, it's not worth it. So most of it just gets thrown in, in the landfill. So essentially, the one problem they have is they have a very high consumption of single-use plastics, and they have developed very little conscience on the problem around it. It's not really their fault because there's not enough education, and to them, since it's all water, I've seen people throw plastic bottles off the boats just left and right, without just like finished plastic bottle, throw it in the water. So there it disappears, and I've seen that a lot. I've seen them fish and then just cut the line and throw it in the water. I've seen them do a lot of shit. So it's a problem because one, I've seen a gigantic amount of fishing line entangled in coral reefs in the Maldives, which I haven't seen other places. I've seen full garbage bags float by, which I assume boats must have just thrown off and just like, once it's in the sea, people forget about it. I've seen so much trash float by. I know that a lot of resorts also dump their food waste. Oh, hello.
Yeah, I think we just had a glitch.
Okay. Well, I can't see. Well, I know that resorts, like most of these resorts have like buffets, no?
Mm-hmm.
So where there's buffets, there's a lot of food waste, obviously. So all this food waste has to go somewhere. So most of the resorts will actually just throw their food waste in the water. So it should be only organic stuff. It's not like it's great if every resort is throwing away all their, food trash, which is not really great food sources, into the water. It's not great. But the problem is that once I started realizing that, hey, okay, they're doing this. So I went out with the boat to see where they're dumping it and like what else is getting caught. And I came back, like I went with like a small net and a box to just fish out any item that wasn't food, and came back with a full box of like plastic because like, they just don't really care. They put everything in it. They shouldn't, but they do. So this happens every single day, and then there's the added problem of, yes, if there's a strong current coming from elsewhere, currents pick up all the trash on the way and just, you know, bring it through. So it's not
Yeah.
necessarily all trash that just originates in the Maldives, because it's not a problem inherent to the Maldives. It's a problem everywhere. And mostly, like I said, what we call ghost nets. So
Mm-hmm.
for anyone who doesn't know, the term ghost nets is is what we call any sort of fishing net that has broken off or that has been abandoned or has been thrown into the water and is no longer used, but obviously is still fishing
Mm-hmm.
unintentionally because it's a net. So they come with the current and, catch whatever is in the way. So that is a big problem just for, like I said, for marine life. It comes through there. So have there's certain resorts and certain islands that have like rehabilitation centers for sea turtles and stuff. And I know they're always at full capacity. Like I think they they get, or like at least in the last, I don't quite remember the numbers, but I know it was at least over 400 turtles in the last few years or so. It's just quite a lot.
And in terms of the ecosystem, where do the turtles fit in into that? How are they? Why are they important for the ecosystem? Because that's something I'm trying to figure out. But for the fact that obviously, um, they've been
I
there
mean,
always, so you need
yeah,
them.
as any animal, like there's absolutely no animal in nature that doesn't have a certain role in its ecosystem. So it exists for one reason or the other, but it's like anything, in any ecosystem, it's all basically about eat and be eaten so that the homeostasis or the
Hmm.
balance in the ecosystem can be maintained. So, ideally, you have your bigger predators, you have your meso, like medium predators, you have smaller fish, you have your plankton, your seagrass, your algae, whatever, all these organisms that kind of follow a structure. So that's where turtles fit in as well. Like turtles, depends on the species, primarily feed either on sponges or certain like sea grasses or algae or on jellyfish or whatever. So were turtles not there, then all of these organisms would take over. It's just all about keeping certain species in check. So it's like with anything, you remove a top predator from its environment, then whatever they're eating will be like, oh, okay, nobody's eating us. So they feel free to reproduce. And then, whatever they're eating becomes less because the balance is off. So,
Got
turtles
it.
are about the same.
Okay, that actually makes perfect sense.
Hmm.
What I was also thinking is, I think it was actually you that told me this because it seems obvious, but it's only obvious once you kind of clock that they don't have in Maldives, right? Like in, let's say, Europe, where you have sewer and public, you open your tap and there's water running and it goes through pipes and everything. They don't really have. I mean, they probably have water in their taps and everything, but they don't have the sewer system as we know it in other places, right? So they need to
No,
ship
of
all the
course,
drinking
but
water.
yeah, so all their drinking water comes obviously as purified, or like, yeah, comes in plastic bottles. I know that like some resorts are making an effort, and I know that the resort where I was at had a plan of installing a desalination plant.
Mm.
So basically, making your own water. At least I'm not sure that it would be good for drinking, but at least for showers and stuff. Because I've been other places. Like, I mean, it's a problem that all islands kind of face. No, most of small islands. Like in the Bahamas, where I was, also the research station had a desalination plant, sort of, that they use not to produce drinking water, but at least for showering and
Hmm.
washing plates and stuff like that. Yeah.
Got it.
So at least there's stuff that you can do, it's a slow change, and you have to keep up. Um, yeah, but I honestly, to be fair, I don't even know what they used to do way before. Like, I should inquire like how they used to drink, like what back in the 60s or 70s, where they got their water from. I'm not sure if it's just all purely coconut based, because I mean, it's a coconut nation. They have an insane amount of coconut trees, so I guess you can keep yourself hydrated with coconut water. But
Wow, that's actually an interesting question. So, because the islands are most of them are very tiny, right? So you won't have any creeks or
no,
little.
no, you absolutely. There's no island with fresh water there. There's just one in the South Formula. I know, because they also grow like watermelons and stuff, something that you could never grow anywhere else. So I think they have like not a lake, I want to say, but like a mud flat or something. But I don't think any, like, none of these islands have freshwater sources. It's literally like, no,
Mm.
not there. Um, but they do have a very high amount of coconut. I don't know.
That's how they sort it out. Okay, fair. So we have kind of covered one limb, so to say, that the tourism impact on Maldives, but you've also mentioned that the natural environment is affected by global warming. What do you mean
Right.
by that?
Oh, well, this is just a global thing, no? Like, I mean, especially for the Maldives, who, like I said, is such a water nation, it affects them because tropical waters are. So basically, if the main thing sustaining biodiversity in the Maldives are coral reefs, because coral reefs are one of those ecosystems that sustain about 1/4 of the biodiversity in the water. So they're rare. They only cover about 1% of the ocean floor, but they do sustain 25% of all wildlife in the ocean.
Really?
Yeah, so they're massively important. However, coral reefs are, so most people wouldn't think that, but corals are actually animals. They don't look like it. They look like stones or plants, or you don't know, but they're animals, or they're tiny little polyps that create colonies, and they symbiotize. I don't know if that's the word, but they kind of host these algae inside their cells. So they're hosting, yeah, algae. And this is a symbiosis that kind of benefits both of them, because the algae gets protection, and it's doing photosynthesis. So it's creating food and energy for the coral. So it doesn't really need to feed that much. It can feed itself, but it gets most of its food or energy from the algae. So basically, these these animals, or the corals, can only exist in a very narrow temperature range. Most of the coral species, there's some cold water species, but most coral species have a very narrow temperature range they can
Hmm.
exist in. So once temperatures, like water temperatures, hit more than 30 degrees, more or less, for extended periods of time, because it can happen that every now and then you get a heat wave for like a week or so. They will be able to sustain that. But what's been happening is that temperatures have been rising, more often and for extended periods of time. So what this causes is, it causes massive amount of heat stress. And it's like imagine getting sick, and then you don't have the energy anymore. So what they do is they expel the algae that's living inside them. So if you that's what we call coral bleaching. So if you ever hear of coral bleaching, it's a phenomenon that's associated with the warming of water temperatures, and then basically the coral becomes all white. So when you start seeing that, it's like, oh, something's going on. It's still the whiteness is still the coral tissue that's still alive, but it's about to die because it's going to starve to death, basically, because without the algae in its tissue, it will not be able to feed itself enough or get enough energy. So it's the fourth stage, basically, to death most of the time, you know. And then what you see right now in the Maldives is many different, like, depends on the area, but where I was, especially more in the north, it has been hit pretty severely because there was a few years, like 2014 and 2016, from what I know, that were extremely hot. And so it just wiped out all the coral. So you just see, to people that don't know, they will go there and they will still see so much fish, like so much more than you expect, that it will still be like, wow, it's amazing. No, it's like so cool. And it is, but it's nowhere near what it used to be. Nowhere near. Because a coral reef that's dead cannot sustain the species that it could be before, you know. So I know because there's customers, there's tourists that come through there and come to the same island year after year after year. And I talked to some people that had been going there for like 15, 20 years every year. And they showed me pictures of the coral reefs like 15 years back, you know, and there was no point of comparison. Like it was absolutely dead now,
Really?
you know, like the color palette was just absolutely off. And this is something that happens everywhere. It's not just in the Maldives, you know, like massive coral death is something that's happening pretty much everywhere. It's very concerning. So, yeah.
I have two questions to you. First one is, why exactly reefs are so important for sustaining other marine life? What exactly they produce food? Just not sure.
Yeah, they like it's like anything. So, basically, it's like many of these ecosystems provide different things. They provide shelter, like a sort of structure, because otherwise you have only what barren sand, you know. So it's like it creates tiny little cities. So you can see. It's curious because like you can literally see, because I would go to the same the same reef every day. You can see the same exact fish hanging out at the same spots every day. You know, like they have the spots they prefer. So it's like a tiny little city. So it provides them shelter, and it does provide them food because so many like different organisms find a place to live there. It's also a place to hunt and stuff. You know, it's like all goes together. So
Got it. Got it. And my second question was, or is, I should say, why, when the temperature rise, the algae is expelled from or ejected, however you
oh,
term it.
I'm no expert on coral physiology. I just know that it happens.
Okay, fair,
Um, but I don't
fair.
know if it's like just a stress reaction, you know, like us when we're really sick and we can't really eat or anything, and we just, you know, like just expel foreign. Maybe it's just because it's like a foreign body, so they can't. I don't know. Maybe it takes more energy in that moment than it take. I honestly, I'm just making assumptions, but I'm no expert on that.
Fair. I actually read before this. I was reading that they are using those kind of like electrical coral to regenerate coral reefs. I don't, especially in Maldives. They are setting
Oh,
those, yeah, they're setting those cones, which are sending those electrical signals, and this is speeding up the regeneration of corals uh,
interesting. Well,
5 times.
you can send me that because I don't know that I've read anything about something like that. I mean, there's a lot of efforts for coral regeneration going on in general, like you know, because trying to sort of produce corals resistant and problem with corals also is that they're very, 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 very slow growers. So, most of these massive coral reefs have taken hundreds of years to get to where they are, like they grow incredibly slowly, most of
Mm.
them. So, and it's so easy. Like that's another problem. Like you see a lot of these tourists that come through that just really are, I don't know that they're being disrespectful. They just don't know better, but they hit on the corals. The corals break off easily, so you see like them standing on the corals or hitting the corals and stuff like that while they swim. It's like breaking my heart inside because
Yeah.
that a piece like that will take decades to regenerate, and so yeah, it's really heartbreaking.
And
Yeah, but yeah, there's a lot of efforts of like a lot of resorts to like coral nurseries and stuff, and yeah, I mean, we'll see. But it's all in any case, it's all in vain if water like extreme events of like rising temperatures keep happening. So you can have 2 years where that are good, and then they start growing, but there's another wave on again. So there's a few species that are more resilient than others. Like you can very much see that some of the acorn corals, like more branchy, are all dead, while some of the thick what are they called, like mushroom corals, or like some of the more
Mhm.
like boulder corals are pretty much in good health. I think you're frozen. Oh, good
Yeah,
for
I
you.
froze, sorry.
But yeah, that's that. No, that's okay.
Yeah, no, it's
So
it's
yeah, but
fine.
like all in all, it's a beautiful location. Like the Maldives is it's very diverse. It's beautiful, especially like diving there. You'll see a lot. It has so much biodiversity. It's just, and I mean, a lot of it is just global problems. It's not like I said innate to the Maldives. It's just problems that most countries are facing, especially like tropical and heavy tourism countries and stuff like that. So, but yeah, it's just I think people who go there just need to be a little bit more conscious, because it's not just that the Maldivians need to maybe change their approach. It's also the tourists, because I've seen it, and I've been around tourists that whole time, and I know that they're just, I don't know, they're on vacation, and a lot of them are a little bit entitled in their relation to nature and to wildlife, and like, well, I'm here, and if I pay for it, I should get what I paid for,
Yeah.
stuff like that. Nature just doesn't work that way, and yeah, it doesn't bend to your will, so you need to be respectful of what's out there, and just if you're lucky enough to be there, just enjoy